Picture two people sitting in the same office break room. One just signed a lease on a car he's been dreaming about for 2 years. New smell, heated seats, a monthly payment that's more than his first apartment ever was. The other one walks in, pours coffee from the same pot, and drives home that evening in something with 140,000 miles on it. 3 years later, one of them has options. A cushion. The ability to say no to a job he doesn't like, or yes to an opportunity that doesn't pay immediately. The other one is still making payments. Here's what I want you to sit with. Both of those people thought they were making reasonable decisions. One of them called it an investment. One of them said it made sense for where he was in life. Neither of them was lying. But one of them was buying something that looks like progress and costs something much harder to see. And the worst part? Most people do it 5 times over without ever realizing it. Not the purchases themselves, but what they quietly take from you after the receipt is long gone. There's a version of getting ahead that looks exactly like falling behind. It doesn't announce itself. It arrives slowly in upgrade after upgrade, each one reasonable on its own. Level 1, the car that owns you back. Let's start with the one most people walk into first. There's a moment in the car buying process that I remember clearly. The salesperson slides a sheet across the table. Not the total price, just the monthly payment. Something like $400 and something. Broken down that way, it sounds manageable. It sounds like nothing. Here's the quiet part most people miss. That number is designed to make you stop thinking about the full picture. A car is what's called a depreciating asset. The moment you drive it off the lot, it starts losing value. According to data from Kelley Blue Book and Edmunds, a new car typically loses somewhere around 20 to 30% of its value in the first year alone. By year 5, it's not unusual for that number to be closer to 50 or 60% of the original purchase price gone. If you paid $35,000 for that car, you just lost the equivalent of a year of rent in 12 months without going anywhere. You're not buying a thing. You're buying a thing that is actively shrinking in value while you make payments on it. But the depreciation is only part of the cost. The fuller picture includes insurance, which goes up when the car's value goes up, maintenance contracts, fuel, and if you financed it, interest that quietly adds hundreds or thousands to the total before you're done. Now let me introduce you to someone. Let's say there's a man named Derek Ellis. Derek is 31. He earns a solid income, not wealthy, but doing fine. He upgrades his car every 4 years, always to something nicer, always with a payment. He tells himself he deserves it. He works hard. And he's right, he does work hard. What Derek doesn't quite see is that his car payment, his insurance bump, and his fuel costs have collectively claimed a fixed slice of his income that can't move. It can't go into an account that grows. It can't cover an emergency without stress. Last year, when a friend asked him to go in on a camping trip, 3 days, nothing extravagant, he said he'd think about it, and then quietly didn't go, because the week before, his car payment hit the same time as his insurance renewal. Economists call this opportunity cost. Every dollar committed to a depreciating asset is a dollar that can't be working somewhere else. That's not a rule. That's just what I noticed when I finally added up what treating myself to a nicer car was actually costing me every single month. The car felt like a win. The payment schedule told a different story. But at least with the car, you can see the payment coming. The next upgrade hides its costs somewhere most people never think to look. Level 2. The house that quietly empties your options. The house upgrade is the one that carries the most social weight. There's something about a bigger house that signals arrival in a way almost nothing else does. More rooms means success. A bigger yard means you've made it. And in most social circles, the question isn't whether you should upgrade, it's when. The mortgage is only the beginning. When a house gets bigger, the fixed costs that follow it don't announce themselves at the signing table. Property taxes scale with value. Homeowners insurance goes up. Utility bills, heating, cooling, electricity expand to fill the space. Furniture to fill rooms that didn't exist before. Maintenance on systems that are larger, older, or more complex. There's a term financial planners use, house poor. It describes a household where the income looks decent on paper, but most of it is locked into the costs of the home, leaving very little room for anything else. Let me tell you about someone. Let's say there's someone named Rachel Boyd. She and her husband bought a house that was, by any reasonable measure, more than they needed at the time. The payment was manageable. What they didn't fully account for was the second layer, the property tax bill that arrived in the fall, the HVAC unit that needed replacing 18 months in, the energy bills that ran nearly double what their old place cost. Within 2 years, they weren't struggling, but they weren't free either. Every month felt tight in a way they hadn't anticipated, and the house, which was supposed to be the reward for working hard, had quietly become the reason they couldn't stop. There's data on this, and what it shows is that once housing eats past a certain share of your income, the math stops working in your favor in almost every other category. The number that matters isn't the size of the house, it's how much room the house leaves you in your budget and in your life. Level 3. The status purchase and the treadmill it puts you on. This one is the most honest to talk about because I've lived it. There was a period in my life when I was spending money I didn't have on clothes and things that signaled a version of success I hadn't quite reached yet. I managed a mid-sized retail store. I wore brands that cost more than made sense. I told myself it was professional. It was an investment in how people perceived me. What it actually was a loan I took out against my future self to impress people I worked with. Research published in the Journal of Consumer Research has found that conspicuous consumption, buying things primarily because they signal status, is driven less by genuine desire and more by the need to be perceived a certain way by others. And here's what makes it particularly expensive hedonic adaptation. The satisfaction from a status purchase fades quickly. Psychologists describe this as the hedonic treadmill. You get the thing, you feel the lift, and then within weeks or sometimes days, the new normal sets in. The bag becomes just the bag, the watch becomes just the watch, and the pressure begins to build again toward the next thing, the next upgrade, the next signal. Social media accelerates this loop in a way that's worth naming plainly. Social comparison theory, first described by the psychologist Leon Festinger in the 1950s, explains that humans naturally evaluate themselves relative to others. When those others are a curated feed of the most aspirational version of everyone you've ever met, that comparison never resolves. There's always a higher tier. Let me introduce you to someone named Marcus. Marcus makes a good living, spends carefully in most areas, but has a weakness for visible upgrades, the kind other people notice. What Marcus doesn't fully see is that the people he's trying to signal to are either not paying attention or, and this is the harder truth, also spending money they don't have to signal right back at him. The whole system runs on mutual performance, and the cost of staying in it is your financial flexibility, paid out quietly in installments. If this kind of thinking is useful to you, the slow, honest kind, the subscribe button is right there. It's the only way this channel keeps going, and I'll be here every week working through exactly this kind of thing. Now back to the list. Level 4, the premium stack you forgot you were paying for. This one hides better than any of the others, because none of the individual numbers are large enough to feel like a decision. Business class upgrade on a flight. Not every flight, just when you're tired. A premium gym membership because the equipment is better and you deserve good equipment. The highest tier of the streaming service because the family needs the screens. An AI tool subscription, a productivity app, a wine club, a concierge service for the occasional convenience. The subscription economy is built on one core insight. Small recurring charges are nearly invisible to human psychology. We feel the pain of a large purchase. We barely register a monthly fee that auto-renews. Individually, none of these feel like choices. Collectively, they form a layer of fixed expenses that run silently in the background. And fixed expenses are the enemy of flexibility. Think about what a fixed expense actually does. It means you have to earn a certain amount before you're even at zero for the month. It raises your floor. And the higher your floor, the less room you have to maneuver to take a risk, to ride out a slow month, to say no to something that no longer serves you. Let me tell you about someone named Karen Ellis. Karen is organized, financially aware, earns well above average. She did a subscription audit, something I'd recommend quietly to almost anyone, and found she was paying for 14 recurring services. Some she used every week, some she hadn't opened in months. The total, when she added it up, was more than she was putting into her retirement account that year. Not because any single one was wrong, because none of them had ever been looked at together. The premium lifestyle doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like you finally reached the level where you can afford the good version of things. But the good version of things, plural, recurring, never ending, is a level that doesn't have a ceiling. Level 5, the invisible competition. Nobody wins. This is the one that powers all the others, because on its own, a nicer car is just a car. A bigger house is just a house. But when the reason you're upgrading is because someone around you just did the math, changes completely. Social comparison theory tells us that humans don't evaluate their situation in isolation. We evaluate it relative to the people around us. This is not a flaw, it's wired in. But in the context of modern finance, it becomes one of the most expensive forces most people never consciously name. The CFP board has surveyed people on this directly. In their research, nearly half of respondents said that other people's financial lives influence how they perceive their own situation. Not their actual numbers, their perception of their own numbers. Someone else's new kitchen makes your functional kitchen feel inadequate. A colleague's business class story makes your economy seat feel like a step down. None of this is the neighbor's fault. None of it is even wrong exactly. It's just expensive. Quietly, persistently expensive. There's a woman I want to describe. Let's call her Diane Morrison. Diane was doing fine. Not spectacular, but genuinely fine. Then she and her husband moved to a neighborhood that was slightly above their income level, which they could just afford and which felt like the right move at the time. Within a year, they renovated the kitchen to match what the house next door had done. They'd bought a car that didn't stand out in the driveway. They'd started taking the kind of vacations their neighbors mentioned at block parties. None of it was reckless. Each decision on its own was defensible. But Diane described it later, and this is what stayed with me, as running a race where the finish line kept moving. She was keeping up, but keeping up had become the entire project. The Joneses, it turns out, aren't trying to beat you. They're just trying to keep up with someone else. The whole system is a loop, and the only way to stop losing is to opt out of the scoring entirely. So here's what I'd actually suggest doing this week. Not a resolution, just a few quiet questions worth sitting with. For your car, do you know the total cost of ownership, each month, payment, insurance, fuel, maintenance, combined? Not the monthly payment, the actual number. For your housing, does your home cost leave you room to absorb a bad month without stress? For status purchases, when was the last time you bought something primarily because of how it would look to someone else? For subscriptions, when did you last look at all of them together at the same time in one place? And for the comparison loop, who specifically are you measuring yourself against? And did they ask you to? None of these are judgments. They're just the questions I wish someone had handed me earlier, before the upgrades started adding up. Remember those two people in the break room at the beginning of this video? One of them drives something forgettable and has a bank account that's doing quiet, unremarkable work in the background. One of them drives something impressive and feels the weight of it at the end of every month. The one with options didn't get there by being smarter. He got there by being a little slower to upgrade and a lot more honest about what each upgrade was actually costing him. Freedom isn't dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It builds in the background, in the gap between what you earn and what you've committed to spending. And every upgrade that narrows that gap, no matter how reasonable it felt at the time, costs you a little bit of it. Quiet doesn't mean small. If you want to keep thinking this way, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.